deep sea is the most magical place. This is a world of unique life forms that we have yet to understand. The deep seabed took millions and millions of years to form. Deep seabed mining is a new extractive industry that would destroy our planet's largest wilderness. Without global regulation, humans will undoubtedly destroy the unknown living inheritance before we even understand it.
We need to have places that are only given the highest level of respect. Those are some of the discussions we need to have.
About 90% of the habitable space on the planet is in the ocean. If you think in 3 dimensions, 90% of what's livable is in the ocean.
The ocean governs Earth's life support system. It's where most of the water is. It's where most of life on Earth is.
The biodiversity and the ability for creation is still alive and well in the deep sea.
If we landed on Mars and we encountered some of the species we're encountering in the deep sea, it would be front page news.
When scientists were originally described as just expanse of ocean of nothingness, but when they went below the surface, what they began to find is that there are mountain ranges that had never been seen before, biodiversity of these mountain ranges. What they began to learn is that these were areas that were just full of life, and the deeper that they went down, they found that all of the creatures there were 100% endemic.
At these depths, there's a whole constellation of life. It is a quiet, dark, cold, and incredibly fragile wilderness. We know more about outer space than we know about life in the deep sea. Indigenous voices from around the world are reminding us that we continue to need to respect and live in harmony with the ocean.
It just reaffirms our genealogy and our story that from this place is where life is created. They later discovered the largest coral, living coral to date on planet Earth. And they date this coral to be about 4,500 to 5,000 years old. And for me, this is science now reaffirming a cultural story, a cultural genealogy of place.
About 900 AD, that's how long we consider ourselves as having lived on our lands as we currently live, utilizing the same ocean resources as we did back then. So any look at our genealogies finds that we were part of a much larger ocean kingdom.
We have responsibility for all things that are here that give us life and sustenance, and we have responsibility to care for all things all the way to the first of our ancestors. It is a perspective that not many people would understand, but it is what we believe in.
Right now, we have lawlessness. We have open season. We have companies and countries wanting to go ahead and profit from taking what they can from the ocean. If that happens, then you'll have essentially the equivalent of the Wild West.
Right now, opponents of seabed mining like to talk about how we need seabed minerals to decarbonize or for our green transition. There is this narrative that they're necessary, that we have a hard choice to make to either mine the seabed or not decarbonize.
When you define what you protect, you also define what you destroy. This is a fluid, dynamic, moving space. So the impacts from deep sea mining do not respect the boundaries of a mining site, and they do not respect the boundaries of a marine protected area. Some of these impacts could really spread far and wide. For example, the sediment plume that potentially could travel several thousands of kilometers. Who can control that? There's nothing to prevent that from having impacts on marine protected areas.
We're not interacting with the ocean every day, so a lot of these problems become far removed from our everyday reality.
Across the globe, humanity all shares one common value. We all depend on and love our ocean. We should question whether extraction is worth undermining our ocean's health. there's still time to do the right thing. It's worth stressing that there is no commercial mining that has actually started yet. There has been a renewed interest in certain metals.
You read enough of these speeches from the government leaders, they are already set on wanting to do the mining. Unless significant pressure comes from outside, mining is going to happen probably within the next 5 years.
One of the false parts of the seabed mining narrative is that we can do it. We, as humankind, do not know if it is feasible to extract minerals from the seabed in any way that could commercially scale or would make technical or financial sense. It is not a foregone conclusion that it is even physically possible or that anyone would make money doing it.
Deep sea mining would not be a quiet operation. In Wales, for example, noise can disrupt communication, it can disrupt hunting, it can disrupt feeding, mating, navigation.
The hunt for minerals on the seabed floor threatens our oceans. Each of the 3 planned types of mining technologies would destroy a different deep sea habitat, each of which took millions of years to form.
There are deep sea hot springs, black smokers called hydrothermal vents. And around those are these columns in which are found certain minerals. Secondly, there's a type of undersea seamount which is coated with a manganese or a cobalt manganese crust. In order to get it, we strip mine that mountain before we know what lives there. The third type of deep sea mining is to collect these potato-sized nodules from the seafloor in various parts of the deep ocean, primarily between Hawaii and Mexico, an area wider than the continental United States. Its seafloor is covered with these polymetallic nodules.
First and foremost, we may well not need minerals from the seabed. Lithium, which is the most sought-after mineral for the energy transition for batteries, is not found in any relevant quantity on the seafloor. What miners are looking for, nickel, cobalt, manganese, a lot of innovation is moving away from that.
The assertion that deep sea bed mining is needed to transition to renewable economies and to make the green transition are assertions, not facts, and it's largely greenwashing.
Deep sea mining companies falsely portray nodules as a battery in a rock. Rocks are not batteries. Rocks are part of the seabed ecosystem.
This is about politics and it's about money. Today, we're sitting in a time when we're facing up to a triple planetary crisis of biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. Deep sea mining will only exacerbate all 3 of those crises. A moratorium is really the only reasonable option.
The part of the narrative that really deserves some critical thinking and a hard look is, can we get the metals? Seabed mining proponents will say, of course we can, we already have. We've had, quote, successful tests. Those were not successful at all. They were full of mishaps, including spills and environmental potential disasters.
I think there is very much a consistent line with higher level and responsible investors that they don't want to touch this industry. No one has really done the maths to get to look at what the potential benefits are going to be from keeping the ocean as it is.
Nobody will notice because it's way offshore. It's at the bottom of the ocean. It's being done by remote control, and we won't know the damage we've done until it's too late. But the scale at which industry wants to proceed in the deep ocean is truly staggering.
The deep sea belongs to all of us and to thousands of species. This is the common heritage of mankind.
It is impossible to enforce those regulations. We cannot effectively protect what we do not understand.
One of the biggest problems we have with regulations is the enforcement. Most of the regulations within the region will be focused on protecting our coral reefs or the fisheries. When you have things like international ships coming in to the water, there's just so much that goes unnoticed and is unmonitored.
We do not have the science to know even what is in the deep ocean, never mind how we can effectively protect it.
21 different countries over the last year have come out with positions for a moratorium, a ban, or a precautionary pause around deep seabed mining.
Seabed miners would be operating with complete impunity, self-supervising, while digging up the world's largest ecosystem.
There are no walls in the ocean that can prevent silt and pollution from entering a protected area at any depth. It's simply impossible to restore millions of years of creation.
All of the tools we have to mitigate destruction on land do not apply in the deep ocean.
When we consider the deep sea, when we consider nodules take millions of years to form, it's not even like mining on land or cutting down a rainforest. At least a rainforest might take hundreds or thousands of years. This is an ecosystem that would take millions of years to recover.
As soon as we dig them up and grind them up, the danger is that we're letting things loose in the ocean that are not supposed to be loose. And we're putting them into a grand chemistry experiment in the ocean. You can't put things back. You dig a hole, there's a plume of silt where you dig the hole, it can travel a long distance. So these are very large areas of impact, and the thing to do is to avoid them if you can. The machinery involves remote control in most cases. More and more, it's going to depend on artificial intelligence guiding gigantic bulldozers that are bigger than a city bus.
The Cook Islands. A lot of people, however, are more concerned about the permanent damage that could be done to Te Moananui or Kiva, which is the Pacific Ocean, particularly in terms of loss of the habitat itself, which are the nodule fields, which used to never having any significant change. You know, they're very still, they're very dark, quiet environments, and then all of a sudden they'll be being flipped over and sucked up, and light and noise, and obviously that will not only have an impact on the species that live on those nodules, but also on species right up and down the water columns.
The seabed mining equipment travels across the seabed floor. It'll create this dust cloud that, if you look at how close the Clarion-Clipperton fracture zone is to areas like Hawaii, to areas like the Pacific Islands, to areas like Mexico and Chile, that sediment plume could have disastrous impacts, which would directly impact Pacific indigenous leaders and their communities.
There's no human oversight of the damage that's being done. It has to be done by remote machines because human beings can't survive at that depth. You've got miles of water above you that's crushing weight.
85% of the ocean remains unmapped. There's so much in the deep sea that we have yet to discover that deserves protecting in its own right because it's incredible, beautiful, brings so much value to us.
We know that testing for COVID comes from material that is found near hydrothermal vents in the ocean. Species that live in the deep ocean might be and appear to be the key to curing certain cancers.
Not something where one small group, one small nation might be making large, impactful decisions about the ocean. The ocean doesn't see these invisible boundaries drawn across it.
The body that makes the rules and regulations for the deep sea has not given any consideration to our cultural connection to the deep sea. In fact, they described what they determined to be cultural, they call tangible cultural heritage in the deep sea as something that is found in the deep sea, like a sunken ship or remains of people or submerged archaeology.
The ISA, the International Seabed Authority, should understand that this big ocean that belongs to all of us, belongs to humanity, the north, the south, east, west, it belongs to all of us. And therefore, our cultural heritage, our way of thinking should be also included in the process of law making, of decision making.
We are most concerned about from an indigenous perspective because you're digging down right to the deepest parts of the ocean where our atua, supernatural deities, are meant to reside, and actually digging into what we consider the Earth Mother herself.
In the Caribbean, if something is happening in Trinidad, it's also going to be happening in Grenada. It's also going to affect what's happening in the Bahamas, the whole chain. So we need to make sure that the entire region is on the same goal, on the same mission.
The deep sea is dark, it's cold, there are levels of pressure that would be intolerable for land-based organisms. And yet, what's miraculous about it is that it is bursting with life, extraordinary life forms. There are others that are also incredibly graceful and elegant and lit up from the inside by bioluminescence.
This process was an intrusion into the place of our creation. And the more that I began to understand this, the more it became clear to me that we needed to, as Indigenous Hawaiians, speak to that because this is the place of our creation.
Indigenous voices remind us to respect and live in harmony with the ocean. What needs to happen now is that global nations need to band together to stop this extractive industry before it really starts. There needs to be a global moratorium decreed by the International Seabed Authority, ISA, and sanctioned by the UN.
Countries that are members of the International Seabed Authority, of which there are 168, need to make a collective decision to hit the pause button on this, rethink what it is the world is doing.
The reality is, we do not need deep-sea mining metals for our green transition. This is a false narrative.
One of the biggest reasons we don't need the minerals from the deep sea is this idea of the circular economy and the fact that we have all of the metals we need already in the systems that we have on the Earth.
Let's work on trying to be better at recycling what's currently already been mined.
Electronic waste is one of the fastest growing global waste streams in the world.
We can do better with product design where you can replace faulty parts and still maintain the longevity of the product itself and not have to go to new sources of metal.
We need to start moving away from a system that is mineral hungry and that requires us to keep going and extracting more and more and more.
The deep ocean operates on timescales so much longer than our lives. Animals live there that do things that human beings could never have imagined. Only in the last 50 years did we even realize life could exist without sunlight. Chemosynthetic life in the ocean. We stand to lose all of that. We can stop a destructive industry before we start it.
And when we talk about the deep ocean, it's not just the seabed, it's all and everything that lives in the water column from the surface all the way down to 5, 6, 8, 10,000 meters depth. Look at it through the lens of what is it doing? How is it driving global planetary processes? And do we need to protect it now more than ever to ensure that oceans plays the role it has in the past and can continue to do so in absorbing, sequestering, and burying that carbon into the sediments to give us a fighting chance to survive over the next 100 years?
These governments need to start listening to what the scientists are saying. There is an overwhelming cry from the scientific community saying, don't pursue this. We know that it will result in significant environmental damage. We know that it will result in species extinctions. We know that there are potentially risks to the ocean's climate regulatory functions.
The deep seabed mining will only occur in the international areas of the world's oceans if the countries of the world agree to let it happen. They have a responsibility to say no.
It's really important that governments continue to invest in other options, new pathways, circular economy, recycling, tech innovation. That's where the energy should be going today, not towards opening up a massive new extractive sector.
We just need to remind ourselves why our ancestors put the deities down in the deep sea. I think it's the places in their world that were most inaccessible.
If we focus with all oceanic communities around the world on the cultural relationship that we have with the ocean, we should be able together to collaborate and to cooperate to address the global challenges of protecting our ocean.
The ocean is the world's largest carbon sink. It sequesters 25% of the entire planet's carbon emissions. There is no question about it. Deep seabed mining would irreparably damage our ocean. Support a moratorium. DefendDeep.org.